Have you ever noticed how silence feels deeper when snow is falling, as if the world itself is gently inviting you to slow down, relax, and drift towards sleep, with a soft feeling of warmth nearby like a quiet fire crackling somewhere behind you? Tonight, you don't need to stay alert or remember anything important. You are safe here, listening calmly, letting your thoughts loosen. This story will move slowly, without urgency, without sharp turns. We will simply follow a quiet idea from the past, one careful step at a time. As you listen, your breathing can soften, your shoulders can rest, and your mind can begin to wander gently into history, where snow ruled not with force, but with soundless patience. Before we move any further, take a quiet moment and notice where you are listening from. What country are you in right now? And what time is it there as these words reach you? Is it late evening, or already deep into the night? If you enjoy calm historical stories like this, stories meant to help you rest, you're warmly invited to press like, subscribe, and share a gentle comment about where you're listening from. There is no rush at all. You can do that now, or later, or not at all. For now, just know you are welcome here, and we will continue slowly, together, into a quiet snowy forest from long ago. In ancient snowy landscapes, silence was not a luxury. It was a necessity shaped by cold air, open space, and the way sound travels when the ground is frozen. Snow does something unusual. It softens some noises while amplifying others. A careless step can echo farther than expected, and a broken branch can feel louder than it truly is. Ancient hunters learned this not through written rules, but through experience. They discovered that the forest listens. Tonight, as you listen too, allow yourself to slow your thoughts. There is no sudden event coming, just steady calm and a quiet understanding forming gently in the background of your mind. Snow does not forgive hurried movement. When someone walks too fast, the surface cracks, compresses, and responds with sound. Ancient hunters understood that silence began before the first step. They would pause at the edge of the forest, standing still, listening to the natural rhythm around them. Wind through branches, snow settling, distant movement. These sounds created a pattern, and hunters learned to move only within that pattern, never against it. As you listen now, notice the rhythm of this story. There is no need to stay fully awake. If your mind drifts, that is perfectly fine. You can always rejoin the sound of this voice. The snow itself became a teacher. Fresh powder behaved differently from hardened crust. Powder could absorb sound, but crust could betray a presence with a sharp crack. Hunters tested the ground carefully, pressing gently, shifting weight slowly, feeling the response beneath their feet. This wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was careful and repetitive. Over time, these movements became instinctive. If your breathing has slowed by now, that's good. If your eyelids feel heavier, that's also good. There is nothing here you must remember. Just let the story continue at its own quiet pace. In many snowy forests, the air is so still that even breath feels loud. Ancient hunters learned to control not only their steps, but their bodies. Calm breathing reduced unnecessary movement. Stillness prevented mistakes. The goal was not speed, but harmony with the environment. Snow rewarded those who respected it. As you listen, you may notice how your body naturally mirrors this idea. Muscles soften. The jaw loosens. The mind stops racing ahead. If you find yourself slipping deeper into rest, allow it. The story will remain calm whether you are fully awake or drifting gently. Silence was also about awareness. Hunters paid attention to how sound moved through trees and open spaces. Dense forests softened noise, while clearings reflected it. Knowing where sound traveled helped them choose their paths. They did not fight the environment. They adapted to it. Tonight, you don't need to adapt to anything at all. This story adapts to you. You can listen closely or loosely. You can focus or let the words blur slightly. Either way, the calm continues, steady and unbroken. Snowfall itself changed the rules. During fresh snowfall, sound became muted, and the forest felt softer. Hunters recognize these moments as opportunities to move more freely, though still with care. Each condition required patience and observation. Nothing was assumed. Everything was felt. As you listen, notice how repetition in this story feels comforting rather than boring. That is intentional. Familiarity helps the mind relax. If you need a reminder, you are doing nothing wrong by feeling sleepy right now. The quiet rule of snow extended beyond footsteps. It shaped posture, timing, and decision-making. Hunters waited longer. They accepted delays. They understood that forcing progress only increased risk. This mindset wasn't about dominance over nature, but careful cooperation with it. In the same way, there is no need to force sleep. Rest arrives when it is permitted by the one who grants benefit through calm, time, and gentle conditions. For now, simply continue listening, or not listening too closely, as the story carries on softly. Even small sounds mattered. Snow brushing against clothing, the shift of weight, the soft exhale of breath. Hunters learned to minimize unnecessary motion. Everything had a purpose. Everything had a place. This quiet discipline wasn't harsh. It was calming, predictable, reassuring. As you hear these words, your surroundings may feel distant. That's fine. You're here, safe, with nothing required of you. The story does not rush. It does not demand attention. It only offers a calm presence. In snowy forests, silence created safety. It reduced danger, conserved energy, and increased awareness. Hunters trusted silence the way we might trust a familiar road home. They followed it patiently, knowing that noise brought uncertainty. As your mind continues to slow, remember there is no sudden ending coming. No loud moment ahead. Just a continued gentle flow. If you drift in and out, that's perfectly natural. You can return to the sound of this voice whenever you wish. Snow also shaped memory. Each quiet step reinforced learning. Over time, hunters no longer thought about silence. They embodied it. Their movements became smooth, deliberate, and calm. This is similar to how your body may now be responding. Breathing settles without instruction. Muscles relax without effort. If sleep approaches, allow it to come without resistance. You are not missing anything important. In the forest, silence made space for listening. Hunters listened not only for animals, but for changes in the environment. A shift in wind, a settling branch, snow falling from a tree. These small details mattered. Listening became a way of being present. As you listen now, you don't need to analyze anything. Presence is enough. Sound alone can be soothing, even when words fade into background texture. The quiet rule of snow was never written down, yet it was understood across generations. Knowledge passed through observation and practice. Calm taught calm. Stillness taught patience. In this moment, the same principle applies. Calm words encourage calm thoughts. Gentle pacing supports rest. If you find your thoughts wandering, let them wander. They will settle on their own. Snow teaches restraint. It reminds us that not every moment needs action. Sometimes the best choice is waiting. Hunters waited for sound to soften, for conditions to improve. In the same way, you are allowed to wait for sleep without chasing it. This story will keep moving quietly whether you are awake or drifting. As the forest remained quiet, hunters became quieter too. Not tense, not fearful, simply attentive. That attentiveness brought safety by the permission of the most merciful, who allows benefit through patience and calm means. Tonight, that same calm is available to you. You do not need to earn it. Just allow it. The quiet rule of snow shaped every journey. It slowed travel, lengthened pauses, and deepened awareness. These were not weaknesses. They were strengths suited to the environment. As your body rests more deeply, you may feel time stretching. That is a sign of relaxation. There is nowhere else you need to be. Snow absorbs urgency. It invites care. It encourages listening. Ancient hunters learned this slowly, step by step. You, too, are learning something simple right now. How to rest while listening. How to let history move gently beside you. Nothing dramatic happens here. No sudden change. Just continued calm. The forest remains quiet. The snow remains patient. And this story continues softly, without resolution, allowing you to drift wherever rest feels easiest. You can stay with the sound, or you can let it fade slightly. Either choice is fine. The quiet rule of snow does not demand attention. It simply exists. And for now, that is enough. Imagine standing at the edge of a winter forest and realizing the ground is not just ground, but a page full of quiet information. Ancient hunters learned to read snow the way you might read a simple map, with calm attention and no hurry. They did not look for dramatic signs. They looked for small differences in texture, color, and shape. Snow could be loose like flour, or stiff like a thin shell. Each kind of snow suggested a different path, a different pace, and a different risk of noise. In their minds, the forest floor was a guide, and every step began with observation. Snow that falls in the night can look identical by morning, but it rarely is. Hunters noticed where wind brushed the surface smooth, and where trees dropped clumps that made little dents and mounds. They watched for places where the snow glittered, slightly crusted by a brief thaw, and places where it stayed dull and powdery. Those details mattered because crust can crack, and powder can swallow sound. They also mattered because certain snow hides holes beneath it, where roots and rocks wait. Reading snow was not a single skill. It was many small habits, repeated until they felt natural. One of the first things they judged was depth. Not with numbers, but with the look of how snow leaned against tree trunks and gathered in low bowls. Deep snow could slow a chase and drain energy, and struggle makes noise. Shallow snow, on the other hand, might expose twigs that snap. Hunters balanced these risks like someone choosing the quieter floorboard in a dark hallway. If your mind begins to drift right here, that is perfectly fine. The details can blur. The calm can remain. The story will keep walking gently, even if you feel sleepy. They also studied the surface for what we might call a skin. Sometimes snow forms a thin crust after sun or mild warmth, then freezes again. That crust can hold for a moment and then break with a crisp sound that feels louder than it should. Hunters learn to test it gently, pressing with the edge of a foot, keeping knees soft, shifting weight gradually as if they were placing a fragile bowl onto a table. If it held, they moved lightly. If it cracked, they rerouted. In snowy forests, rerouting was normal, not a failure. The forest was in charge of conditions, and people adapted, accepting the slow pace with quiet discipline. Wind left messages everywhere. A ridge of snow on one side of a fallen log, a bare patch on the other, a line of drift like a soft wave frozen in place. Hunters used these shapes to understand where gusts had been strongest and where sound might carry. Wind also packs snow tighter, which could be quieter under careful steps, or louder if it turned to brittle crust. They learned which slopes stayed sheltered and which ones turned sharp and exposed. You do not have to hold these details in your memory. Just let them pass through, like gentle air through branches, while your body rests more deeply. Even color mattered, in a gentle way. Clean snow reflected light differently depending on age and temperature. A slightly gray surface could mean older snow with more compacted grains, sometimes firmer underfoot. A bright, feathery layer might be fresh and soft, ideal for quiet movement but difficult for fast travel. Hunters watched shadows too. Shade beneath pines often kept snow colder and more powdery, while open sun might create crust that cracked. They noticed tiny sparkles that hinted at refrozen grains, and dull patches that hinted at softness. And if your attention loosens right now, that is okay. The calm is doing its work. Tracks were another form of writing. Hoof prints, small paw marks, the faint drag of a tail, or the pattern of a bird's hop. Hunters could tell direction by the sharper edge of a print, and freshness by how the snow crystals looked along the rim. Wind can blur a track, and new snowfall can soften it, so they learned to notice subtle cues. A crisp outline, a little sparkle where compression changed the surface, a small scatter of snow kicked forward. The snow carried these signs quietly, as if it wanted to be understood only by those who approached slowly. Sometimes the best information was what was missing. A branch low enough to brush a traveler would leave a shallow groove if something passed recently. A patch of snow beneath a tree might be oddly clean because it was disturbed. Hunters looked for these quiet negatives, the absence that suggests presence. In a snowy forest, the ground is generous with clues, but only if you move slowly enough to see them. Their pace was often a gentle glide punctuated by stops, as if they were listening with their eyes. If your thoughts wander away for a moment, you can let them wander. The story will still be here. Snow also hinted at time. In the early morning, surfaces can be firmer, especially after a clear cold night when everything tightens and stills. Later, if sunlight touches a slope, the top layer can soften, then refreeze when shade returns, turning the same path into a different sound. Hunters remembered these cycles without clocks. They knew certain clearings became noisy by afternoon, and certain shaded paths stayed soft and quiet longer. This knowledge helped them choose when to move and when to wait, with patient confidence. If your eyelids feel heavier now, you can allow that softness without resisting it. Under snow, the ground is never flat. Roots lift it, rocks harden it, and hidden hollows wait like quiet surprises. Hunters learned to notice where snow sank slightly, suggesting a pocket beneath, and where it sat proud, suggesting a buried obstacle. They preferred routes where the snow looked evenly supported, often near the bases of trees where roots made stable ridges. But they also avoided obvious traps like deep drifts that could swallow a leg and cause a sudden stumble. Quiet movement was partly about sound, but partly about stability. A stable step is a quiet step, and a quiet step keeps the mind calm. Forests have their own acoustic rooms. Dense stands of evergreens can soften echoes, while open corridors between trunks can carry sound farther than expected. Hunters combined snow reading with sound reading, choosing routes where the environment naturally muffled mistakes. A shallow depression might hide a footstep. A line of brush might mask a whisper of movement. Sometimes they paused just to hear how far a small sound traveled, like testing the air. None of this made them invisible. It simply reduced the chance of announcing themselves. And you can relax into that same idea now, letting the world feel quieter inside your thoughts. Sometimes they tested snow with tools, not as weapons but as simple helpers. A staff could probe depth, feel crust strength, and find hidden gaps between roots. A lightly tapped branch could tell whether the surface would crack under a full step. These actions were small and quiet, done with restraint, never frantic. The goal was to learn before committing weight. In modern terms, it was risk management, but in a softer winter form. Every test saved energy and reduced noise later. The forest rewarded those who asked careful questions of the ground, then moved slowly with the answers. Certain snow conditions made travel almost silent. Fresh powder under calm air can cushion sound, and hunters could move with slow, rolling steps that pressed snow without snapping it. Other conditions, like granular squeaky snow in very cold air, could betray even careful movement with a thin, sharp cry underfoot. Hunters noticed this squeak and adjusted their plans, sometimes choosing to wait for wind noise, or moving along surfaces that were naturally louder anyway, like frozen stream beds where sound blended. If you feel your attention floating a little, that is normal. You can keep listening lightly. The words can simply become part of the room. Reading snow also meant reading danger. A shallow layer over ice can be slick, especially near water or in shaded bends where freezing happens unevenly. A drift can hide a hole around a stump. A slope can slide if the top layer shears away. Ancient hunters did not have modern terms, but they had the same cautious sense. They watched for subtle cracks, for smooth glazed patches, for snow that looked too perfect, like a cover over something uneven. They avoided rushing downhill, because a sudden slide is loud, and loud movement invites trouble. Caution, in winter, is a kind of quiet wisdom. Sometimes the route was chosen for quietness, not directness. A longer path through sheltered trees could be better than a short crossing of exposed crust where every step snapped. Hunters accepted detours as normal, the way a traveler accepts a gentle curve in the road. Their goal was not to conquer distance, but to arrive in the right condition, with enough calm and strength to continue. That mindset can feel soothing in a world that often pushes speed. As you listen, you are allowed to take the longer route towards sleep. There is no deadline here, only a steady, gentle pace that keeps lowering the noise inside the mind. Snow near animals also look different. Around feeding areas, the surface might be scuffed, compacted, or lightly sprayed from movement, like a rough sketch over a blank page. Near resting spots, snow could be pressed into shallow bowls, sometimes with a faint warmth that later refroze into a smoother texture. Hunters learned to recognize these subtle signs without disturbing them. They approached with extra care, because the quiet rule matters most when you are close. They might stop and watch the snow itself for a moment, letting their breathing settle, then continue, slow and controlled, leaving the forest as undisturbed as possible. In some forests, fallen needles and leaf litter mixed with snow, creating patches that were quieter than pure crust. Hunters used these mixed zones like soft rugs placed by nature, stepping where needles broke the contact between foot and ice. They also used the edges of logs, where snow piled deep and stayed soft, and the lee side of rocks where wind packed the surface into stable layers. This is the kind of detail that seems small, yet it shaped survival and success. The forest was full of tiny advantages, and hunters collected them patiently. If you are drifting now, you can drift. The story will keep moving softly without needing your full attention. Even the sound of snow underfoot changed with temperature. When it is very cold, snow can squeak. When it is nearer to melting, it can whisper or compress silently, almost like a soft sigh. Hunters learn the day's mood by listening to their first few steps. If the snow spoke loudly, they adjusted, choosing slower transfers of weight, softer surfaces, or moments when wind covered them. They might move closer to tree lines where shade kept powder, or step into old tracks that reduced crunch. This constant adjustment was tiring, yet it was also predictable, and predictability can be calming. If your breathing is slower now, that is a good sign. By reading snow, hunters reduced the need for sudden decisions. The ground gave them early warnings, and early warnings kept everything quiet. In that way, snow was not only an obstacle. It was guidance, a teacher that offered information to anyone willing to look closely and move slowly. The forest did not promise ease, but it offered clues. And those clues helped people move with calm intention rather than rushing and reacting. Let that idea settle gently in the back of your mind. Slow observation creates quiet movement. Quiet movement creates a calmer mind, and a calmer mind makes rest feel more natural. As the day wore on, their mental map updated constantly. A new drift meant a new hazard. A fresh track meant a new possibility. A crust forming in the shade meant a new sound to avoid. Yet the process stayed the same. Observe, test, choose, and move softly. They did it again and again, until the repetition became comforting, like a familiar routine. There is no grand conclusion waiting at the end of this segment. Just the ongoing practice of careful attention. If your mind drifts or skips a detail, that is perfectly fine. The snow map continues, and the story keeps reading it, softly, step by step, into quiet. Movement in deep winter forests was never about lifting the foot high and placing it down firmly. Ancient hunters learned that silence depended on how weight traveled through the body. Before a step was complete, it already began in the hips, the knees, the balance of the spine. Weight was shifted slowly, almost patiently, allowing the ground to respond before commitment. A rushed transfer caused surprise sounds, small cracks, or slips that echoed farther than expected. By moving gradually, hunters allowed snow to compress gently instead of breaking suddenly. As you listen now, notice how the pace of these words mirrors that idea, slow enough to feel steady, slow enough to invite rest. A quiet step often began with barely lifting the foot at all. Hunters slid it forward just above the surface, minimizing disturbance. When the foot touched down, it rested lightly, testing the snow before taking full weight. Only after feeling stability did the body follow. This sequence reduced sudden pressure, which is what makes snow speak loudly. Over time, this became instinctive, like breathing. There was no counting, no measuring, just calm awareness. If your body feels heavier now, that is not a problem. Heaviness can be a sign of relaxation, a sign that weight is settling comfortably, just as those careful steps settled into snow. The knees played an important role. Locked knees transmit force quickly, while soft knees absorb it. Hunters kept their knees slightly bent, allowing their bodies to act like gentle springs. This absorbed sound and prevented jolts. It also helped them recover smoothly if the snow shifted unexpectedly. Balance was always prioritized over speed. Even a small stumble could cause a loud correction step. By staying low and flexible, hunters reduced the need for sudden movements. As you listen, your own knees might relax, your legs sinking more fully into rest. There is no need to hold tension here. The story moves slowly enough to support letting go. Weight transfer was also timed with breath. Exhaling gently as weight settled helped keep movement smooth. Breath and motion became linked, not deliberately, but naturally. A slow exhale softened the body and reduced unnecessary stiffness. This coordination made movement quieter and more efficient. Hunters did not think of this as a technique. It was simply how the body learned to behave in snow. You do not need to control your breathing now. If it naturally slows or deepens, allow it. The calm rhythm of the story offers enough space for your body to find its own quiet pattern. Foot placement mattered less than foot removal. Lifting a foot too quickly could break snow crust or drag hidden twigs. Hunters eased their feet upward, peeling them away from the surface slowly. This reduced the chance of sudden noise. Even when leaving a footprint, they wanted the sound to be dull and soft rather than sharp. Over time, they learned which surfaces released easily and which held tightly. That knowledge guided how slowly they lifted each step. If your attention drifts slightly here, that is fine. The idea continues even if the details blur. Quiet learning does not require sharp focus. Different terrain required different transfers. On slopes, weight was kept centered to avoid sliding. On uneven ground, hunters tested stability longer before shifting fully. Near roots or rocks, they adjusted angles, placing the foot where support felt most even. These micro-adjustments happened continuously, without drama. The body learned to respond without panic. Panic creates noise. Calm creates control. As you listen, you might notice how calm repetition makes the story feel predictable. Predictability can be soothing. It allows the mind to relax, knowing there are no sudden changes ahead. Snow depth changed everything. In deep snow, lifting the foot too high wasted energy and created imbalance. Hunters preferred a shallow, gliding motion, keeping steps short and deliberate. In shallow snow, they were careful to avoid hidden debris that could snap. Each condition demanded awareness, not speed. Weight transfer adapted naturally. The goal was always the same: reduce impact, reduce sound. If your eyelids are growing heavier now, you do not need to resist that feeling. The story does not need full attention to continue quietly in the background. The upper body mattered as much as the feet. Hunters kept their torsos steady, avoiding swaying that could shift weight unpredictably. Arms moved slowly and close to the body. Sudden arm movement could change balance and force a corrective step. Everything was controlled, but not stiff. Think of it as softness rather than rigidity. Soft control allowed adjustments without noise. As you listen, you may feel your shoulders dropping slightly. That is a good sign. A settled upper body supports calm breathing and quiet rest. In very cold conditions, even careful steps could produce sound. Hunters accepted that silence was never perfect. Instead, they aimed for consistency. A steady, low-level sound blended into the environment better than sudden spikes. Smooth weight transfer helped maintain that consistency. This mindset reduced stress. They did not panic over a small noise. They simply adjusted and continued. You can adopt the same gentleness with your own thoughts. If a thought pops up, you do not need to chase it away. Let it settle naturally as the story continues. Training weight transfer took time. Young hunters learned by watching elders move. They copied posture, pace, and patience. Corrections were subtle, often unspoken. The forest itself provided feedback. Loud steps taught lessons quickly. Quiet steps reinforced calm habits. Over time, the body learned what worked. This kind of learning is slow and deep. It stays without effort. As you listen, your mind may be learning something similar, not about snow, but about slowing down. You do not need to understand it consciously for it to help you rest. Even pauses were part of movement. Hunters often stopped mid-step, holding weight lightly on one foot while assessing the ground ahead. This pause reduced rushed decisions. It also allowed the snow to settle quietly before the next transfer. Pausing prevented chains of noise. In your own experience right now, pauses are welcome. Silence between thoughts can be restful. You do not need to fill every moment with attention. The story leaves space, and that space can feel comforting. Weight transfer also conserved energy. Sudden movements use more strength and increase fatigue. Fatigue leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to noise. By moving efficiently, hunters could travel longer without exhaustion. Their calm pace protected both body and intention. As your body rests now, energy is being conserved in a different way. Muscles release effort. Breathing becomes economical. There is no demand for performance. Just quiet listening or quiet drifting, both are acceptable. Footwear influenced technique. Soft soles allowed better feeling of the ground, while stiff soles required slower testing. Hunters adjusted accordingly, never assuming one method fit all conditions. This flexibility kept them adaptable. Adaptability reduced stress. Stress causes tension, and tension causes noise. Everything returned to the same principle: softness, patience, gradual commitment. If you find your thoughts slowing, that is not boredom. It is your nervous system responding to calm repetition. In forests with packed animal trails, weight transfer became smoother. Packed snow supported weight more evenly, allowing slightly quicker movement without added noise. Hunters still moved carefully, but the trail helped. This shows how environment and technique work together. Silence is not created by effort alone. It is supported by choosing the right conditions. In this moment, you have chosen a supportive condition for rest. A quiet story, a steady voice, a slow pace. Let that support do its work. When snow conditions changed unexpectedly, hunters adapted without frustration. A crack underfoot did not mean failure. It meant slow down, soften, adjust. This calm response prevented escalation. They did not tense up or rush to compensate. They returned to gradual weight transfer. This attitude is useful beyond forests. As you listen now, if your body shifts or your thoughts wander, there is no problem. Simply return to comfort. The story continues without judgment. The most experienced hunters moved with almost no visible effort. Their steps look simple, but they were the result of countless small decisions. Weight flowed smoothly from one foot to the other, like water finding the easiest path. This flow reduced sound naturally. It did not require constant thinking. It was embodied calm. You do not need to reach that state tonight. Even a small amount of slowing can help your mind settle. Let the story carry the rest. Snow sometimes collapsed unpredictably, even under careful steps. Hunters accepted this uncertainty. Acceptance reduced fear, and reduced fear kept movements controlled. They trusted their ability to recover quietly. Trust is calming. In this moment, you can trust that nothing sudden will happen here. The rhythm remains steady. The voice remains calm. You are safe to relax. As night approached, visibility decreased, making weight transfer even more important. Without clear sight, feeling became the primary guide. Hunters relied on the feedback from snow beneath their feet. This tactile awareness sharpened without tension. It was quiet focus, not alert strain. As you listen now, visual imagery may fade. That is fine. Sound alone is enough to guide you toward rest. Gradual weight transfer was not glamorous. It did not make stories of speed or force, but it made survival possible. It turned the forest from an enemy into a partner. Every careful step was a small agreement with the environment. In the same way, listening quietly right now is a small agreement with rest. You are allowing calm to arrive gradually, without forcing it. There is no final lesson here, no sharp ending. Just the continued image of careful steps, slow shifts of weight, and snow responding softly. The forest remains quiet. Movement continues gently. And as the story goes on, you can let your awareness soften even more, knowing that nothing urgent is coming, only steady calm, carrying you forward at its own patient pace. In snowy forests, some paths already existed before any human arrived. Animals moved through the landscape every day, pressing snow down with repeated steps, shaping narrow corridors that followed the easiest routes. Ancient hunters noticed these paths and understood their value. A trail made by animals was often quieter than untouched snow, especially when the surface nearby had formed a brittle crust. Packed snow could support weight more evenly, reducing sudden cracks. These paths were not chosen at random. They curved around obstacles, crossed streams at stable points, and followed gentle slopes. By stepping where animals had already stepped, hunters borrowed the forest's own design. Animal trails also reduced uncertainty. Instead of testing every new patch of snow, hunters could rely on the repeated passage of hooves or paws. This saved energy and lowered stress, both of which helped maintain calm movement. Stress causes tension, and tension makes noise. The trail offered predictability, and predictability allowed the body to relax. Hunters still moved carefully, but the path gave subtle reassurance. As you listen now, notice how repetition in this story feels grounding. Familiar ideas return in slightly different forms, helping the mind settle without effort. Different animals created different kinds of trails. Deer and elk left long, narrow lines of compacted snow that flowed smoothly through trees. Smaller animals made lighter tracks, less reliable for full human weight but still useful for reading direction and terrain. Predators followed these same routes, knowing they led to food and water. Hunters recognized this pattern. Following an animal path was not just about quiet movement. It was about understanding the habits of life in the forest. The trail was a story written by many feet, repeated until it became a reliable guide. These paths often led to important places: water crossings where ice was thicker, sheltered valleys where wind was weaker, feeding grounds where vegetation lay beneath the snow. Animals chose routes that conserved energy, and humans benefited from that wisdom. Hunters did not need to dominate the landscape to survive within it. They learned to observe and adapt. As you listen, you may feel a similar sense of guidance, as if the story itself is carrying you gently along a path already prepared for rest. Animal trails also helped with sound control. Packed snow, when stable, produces a duller sound than crust breaking under a fresh step. However, hunters remained cautious. Overpacked snow could become slick or noisy if temperatures dropped sharply. They tested each trail carefully before committing to it. A quiet tap of a foot, a slight shift of weight, then a pause. The trail was an aid, not a guarantee. This careful balance between trust and awareness kept movement smooth. You do not need to hold this balance consciously now. The story maintains it for you. Following animal paths required humility. Hunters accepted that animals often knew the terrain better than humans did. This acceptance reduced unnecessary struggle. Instead of forcing straight lines, they curved with the land. Curves slow movement, and slower movement is quieter. The path became a rhythm rather than a destination. In your own listening, you may notice time stretching. Minutes feel softer, less defined. That is a natural response to gentle pacing, and you can allow it without concern. Animal trails sometimes pass through dense vegetation where branches and brush muffled sound. This added another layer of quiet. Hunters learned which trails stayed protected and which opened suddenly into exposed spaces. They slowed near openings, knowing sound traveled farther there. This anticipation prevented abrupt stops or hurried adjustments. Everything was done in advance, calmly. If your thoughts drift here, that is fine. Anticipation is not required. The story unfolds gently whether you follow every detail or not. In deep snow, trails could sink slightly below the surrounding surface, creating a shallow trench. This helped block wind and further dampen sound. Hunters appreciated these natural channels, moving within them carefully. However, they also stayed alert for hidden obstacles beneath compacted snow, such as roots or stones. A misstep there could cause a stumble. So even on approved paths, they remained attentive. Attentiveness does not have to feel tense. It can be soft, like awareness without effort. You can rest into that same feeling now. Animal trails also changed with time. Fresh snowfall softened them. Wind drifted snow across them. Hunters watched for signs of age, knowing an old trail might not support weight as well as a fresh one. They adjusted their steps accordingly, spreading weight, slowing pace. This constant updating kept movement quiet. Nothing was assumed to be permanent. Conditions shifted, and people shifted with them. This acceptance of change can feel calming. There is no need for rigid expectations when everything is allowed to adjust naturally. Sometimes hunters used trails briefly, then left them. Staying too long on a well-used path could increase visibility. Quiet movement is not only about sound, but about blending into patterns. Hunters chose when to follow and when to diverge, stepping off gently into softer snow when needed. This transition required extra care because leaving the path could introduce noise. They prepared for it mentally, slowing even more. Preparation prevented mistakes. In this moment, you do not need preparation. The story holds the pace steady for you. Animal paths often intersected, creating networks. These intersections revealed traffic patterns. Hunters could tell which routes were used frequently and which were occasional. Frequent use suggested reliability. Occasional use suggested caution. Reading these patterns took patience. It also rewarded stillness. Hunters often stopped at intersections, listening and observing before choosing a direction. Pausing was not wasted time. It was part of movement. If you pause mentally right now, letting a thought fade without replacing it, that pause is also part of rest. In winter forests, silence amplified awareness. On animal trails, hunters could focus more on listening ahead rather than worrying about their own noise. This freed attention for subtle sounds, like distant movement or shifting wind. Reduced self-noise creates mental space. As you listen, you might notice a similar effect. The steady voice reduces internal noise, leaving space for calm. You do not need to fill that space. Empty space can be restful. Animals also avoided certain areas, and their absence was informative. No trails through a section of forest might suggest deep drifts, unstable ground, or frequent predators. Hunters respected these gaps. Silence sometimes means choosing not to go somewhere. In your own experience right now, choosing stillness is also a choice. You do not need to follow every thought. Let some paths remain unused. Following animal-approved paths reduced effort. Reduced effort preserved warmth and strength. Warmth prevented shivering, and shivering makes noise. Everything connected. Quiet paths supported quiet bodies. Quiet bodies supported calm minds. This chain of effects made animal trails valuable beyond convenience. They were tools for maintaining balance. As your body rests now, warmth may spread gently. That comfort supports deeper relaxation without needing conscious effort. Sometimes fresh tracks appeared on an old trail, showing recent movement. Hunters used this information to adjust timing. They might wait, or they might slow further. This patience reduced surprises. Surprises cause sudden movements, and sudden movements cause noise. Patience was a form of silence. You can allow patience now. There is no ending you must stay awake for. The story continues calmly, regardless of your level of attention. Animal trails were never perfect. Ice patches formed. Snow collapsed. Branches fell across them. Hunters accepted these imperfections and adapted. Adaptation was quiet when done slowly. Frustration was loud, and so it was avoided. This attitude shaped winter survival. As you listen, notice how the absence of urgency feels. There is no problem to solve, no obstacle to overcome, just steady, gentle movement through ideas. Over time, hunters remembered reliable paths the way we remember familiar streets. These memories reduced decision-making and eased movement. Familiarity breeds calm. Calm reduces noise. The cycle continued. In this moment, familiarity with the voice and pacing may be building. That familiarity can carry you towards sleep naturally, without effort. Animal-approved paths were not signs of control over nature, but signs of cooperation with it. Hunters followed where life already flowed. They did not need to create new routes when good ones existed. This humility kept them quiet and observant. You can rest in that same humility now, allowing the story to guide you gently without resistance. There is no final destination at the end of these paths, only continued movement. Trails curve out of sight, disappear under new snow, and reappear elsewhere. The forest keeps changing, and so does the journey. The story does not close this idea tightly. It leaves it open, like a trail continuing into trees, quiet and patient, inviting you to drift onward at whatever pace feels most restful. In snowy forests, wind was always present, even when it could not be seen. Ancient hunters treated wind like a quiet companion that walked beside them, influencing every decision. Wind carried scent, but it also carried sound. A gentle breeze could soften footsteps, while still air could make even the smallest noise feel exposed. Hunters learned to notice wind direction through subtle signs: drifting snow, swaying branches, or the faint chill on one side of the face. These observations were not rushed. They were absorbed slowly, allowing movement to align with invisible currents rather than resist them. Wind shaped how sound traveled. When moving into the wind, hunters found their own noises were pushed back toward them, reducing how far those sounds carried ahead. Moving with the wind, however, could send sound forward, announcing presence before it was visible. This knowledge guided routes and timing. Hunters preferred to approach from downwind when possible, letting wind pull sound and scent away from the path. As you listen now, you do not need to analyze anything. The steady rhythm of this story acts like a soft breeze itself, gently shaping your thoughts without effort. Still days required extra patience. When the air was calm, sound traveled cleanly and far. Hunters adjusted by slowing even more, extending pauses between steps, and using natural cover like trees and terrain to break sound lines. They accepted that progress would be slower. This acceptance reduced frustration. Frustration creates tension, and tension makes noise. In this way, windless days taught restraint. You may feel a similar restraint now, a gentle slowing that feels natural rather than forced. That feeling supports rest, even if you are not fully aware of it. On windy days, the forest sounded different. Branches whispered. Snow shifted softly. Distant trees creaked. These background sounds created a moving blanket of noise that could hide careful steps. Hunters timed movement to these natural rhythms, stepping when gusts rose, pausing when they fell. This timing was intuitive rather than counted. It required listening, not thinking. As you listen now, you may notice how the consistent tone of the voice creates a steady background, making other thoughts less noticeable. That quiet blending is intentional. Wind also affected the snow itself. Strong gusts packed surfaces into firmer layers, while sheltered areas stayed soft and powdery. Hunters combined their understanding of wind with their reading of snow, choosing routes that balanced stability and silence. A wind-packed ridge might support weight well, but if too hard, it could crack. A sheltered hollow might be quiet, but deep. Decisions were never absolute. They were gentle adjustments made moment by moment. This flexibility reduced sudden changes, and reduced sudden changes kept movement quiet. Temperature changes often followed wind. Cold winds could harden snow quickly, making surfaces sharper and louder. Warmer breezes might soften crusts, allowing quieter compression. Hunters felt these changes on their skin and adjusted accordingly. They did not rely on tools to measure conditions. Their bodies were the instruments. In your own experience right now, your body is also responding to subtle cues. A slower heartbeat, a deeper breath, a sense of heaviness. These signs mean rest is becoming easier. Wind direction was checked repeatedly. It could shift unexpectedly around hills and valleys, funneling through narrow spaces. Hunters paused to reorient themselves, feeling which side of the face cooled first, watching which way loose snow drifted when disturbed. These pauses were brief but frequent. They prevented mistakes later. Preventing mistakes was quieter than correcting them. In the same way, this story places gentle pauses in its rhythm, allowing your mind to settle without needing correction. Sound masking was one of wind's greatest gifts. A steady breeze created a soft roar that blurred individual noises into the background. Hunters took advantage of this, moving more confidently but still carefully. Confidence reduced stiffness, and reduced stiffness improved balance. Balance kept steps smooth. Everything connected back to calm. If you find your thoughts blending into the background right now, that is not distraction. It is the effect of gentle sound masking, helping the mind rest. However, wind could also be unpredictable. Sudden lulls exposed sound. Hunters stayed alert for these changes, slowing instinctively when the forest quieted. This responsiveness prevented abrupt stops. Abrupt stops create imbalance, and imbalance creates noise. Their movement remained fluid, adjusting to conditions like water flowing around stones. You do not need to adjust to anything here. The conditions of this story remain steady, offering a smooth path toward rest. Wind carried information beyond sound. It moved scents, carried cold, and revealed open spaces. Hunters read wind patterns to understand terrain ahead. A sudden rush of air might signal a clearing. A swirling current might indicate a ravine or bend. This information helped them prepare quietly rather than react loudly. Preparation is quieter than reaction. As you listen, you are also being prepared for rest, not by instruction, but by repetition and calm pacing. Even clothing was adjusted with wind in mind. Hunters arranged layers to block chill without restricting movement. Restricted movement leads to forced steps, and forced steps create noise. Comfortable warmth allowed muscles to stay loose and responsive. Loose muscles absorb shock better than tense ones. If you feel warmth or comfort spreading now, that is a natural part of relaxing. There is no need to change anything. Wind also influenced decision-making about when not to move. Strong gusts could hide sound, but they could also obscure hearing. Hunters sometimes waited until wind eased enough to listen clearly. This waiting was purposeful, not passive. Waiting reduced risk. Reduced risk supported calm. Calm preserved silence. You are allowed to wait too, without expectation. Sleep does not need to be chased. It arrives when conditions are gentle. In dense forests, wind behaved differently. It broke into small currents, changing direction frequently. Hunters moved cautiously there, checking direction often. In open areas, wind was more consistent but louder. Each environment required a different approach. This adaptability was learned over time. Learning took patience. Patience created quiet. The same cycle repeats here. Patience with this slow story can create space for your mind to rest. Wind also affected visibility. Blowing snow reduced clarity, hiding movement. Hunters sometimes used this to move when otherwise they might wait. Reduced visibility meant reduced chance of being seen, but also increased chance of missteps. Balance was key. They moved carefully, even when hidden. Hiding did not mean rushing. If your awareness feels slightly hazy now, that is similar to blowing snow. It is not a problem. The story remains steady enough to guide you gently. At night, wind felt stronger and colder. Sound carried differently in darkness. Hunters relied more on wind cues when sight was limited. They listened for shifts, feeling changes against their skin. This heightened sensory awareness did not create anxiety. It created focus. Focus without tension is calming. As you listen now, you do not need heightened focus. Soft awareness is enough. Wind reminded hunters that not everything visible mattered most. Invisible forces shaped outcomes just as much as visible ones. Respecting these forces helped maintain quiet. This respect was practical, not symbolic. It kept people alive. In this moment, respecting gentle tiredness can help rest arrive. You do not need to stay alert. You can let invisible calm do its work. The invisible companion of wind walked with hunters through every snowy forest. Sometimes helpful, sometimes challenging, always present. They learned to listen to it, adjust to it, and move with it rather than against it. The story does not close this idea tightly. Like wind itself, it moves on quietly, leaving you in a steady, calm atmosphere when nothing urgent waits, and rest can arrive naturally, carried softly by unseen currents. In snowy forests, clothing was never just protection from cold. It was part of the sound a hunter carried. Ancient hunters understood that even the quietest step could be betrayed by rustling fabric or hard edges knocking together. Clothing that spoke too loudly could undo careful movement. For this reason, garments were chosen and arranged with sound in mind. Soft materials moved quietly against themselves. Flexible layers followed the body without snapping or scraping. Nothing was left loose without purpose. As you listen now, imagine how quiet clothing supports quiet movement, the way calm surroundings support a calm mind. Cold air makes many materials stiff. When stiffness increases, sound follows. Hunters learned this through experience, adjusting layers depending on temperature. In extreme cold, even small motions could produce sharp noises. To prevent this, clothing was worn in a way that allowed warmth without excessive bulk. Too much bulk caused friction. Too little caused shivering, and shivering made noise. Balance was essential. That balance did not come from precision tools, but from repeated observation. In the same way, your body right now may be finding its own balance between warmth and ease, slowly settling without instruction. Loose items were carefully managed. Straps, cords, and carried objects could tap or swing with movement. Hunters tied these elements close to the body, not tightly, but securely enough to prevent sudden motion. A small clink in a quiet forest could travel far. Preventing that sound was easier than reacting after it happened. Prevention was a form of silence. As you listen, notice how this story prevents sudden shifts. The pacing remains even, offering a steady surface for your thoughts to rest upon. Tools were wrapped or padded. Stone against stone, or bone against wood, could create sharp sounds when they touched. Hunters wrapped tools in soft materials, keeping them from speaking unexpectedly. This practice reduced anxiety as well. Knowing that equipment would remain quiet allowed the body to stay relaxed. Relaxation improved balance, and balance supported silent steps. Everything worked together. If you feel your shoulders easing right now, that is not accidental. Reduced internal noise allows physical tension to release naturally. Clothing also affected posture. Heavy or poorly balanced garments pulled the body forward or sideways, forcing corrective movements. Corrections are often louder than steady motion. Hunters adjusted how items were worn to maintain centered balance. Weight was distributed evenly, allowing smooth shifts without sudden strain. This attention to balance made movement feel easier and quieter. In your own experience, physical comfort can influence mental calm. A comfortable position supports stillness. Stillness invites rest. Layering was deliberate. Inner layers focused on warmth and softness. Outer layers focused on protection from wind and snow. The interaction between layers mattered. Rough surfaces rubbing together created sound. Hunters tested movements, twisting gently, bending, listening to how fabric responded. If something whispered too loudly, it was adjusted. These small adjustments prevented bigger problems later. As you listen, you do not need to adjust anything consciously. The sound of this voice has already been shaped to avoid sharp edges, allowing your mind to remain at ease. Moisture was another concern. Wet clothing stiffens and becomes noisy when frozen. Hunters managed sweat carefully, venting heat before becoming damp. This required awareness and restraint. Moving too fast caused sweating. Moving too slowly caused chill. Finding the middle path preserved both warmth and quiet. This balance took patience. It also encouraged steady pacing. In the same way, this story avoids extremes. It does not rush, and it does not stop abruptly. It continues gently, inviting your awareness to follow or simply drift. Footwear was part of clothing, and it demanded special care. Hard soles transmitted sound directly to the ground. Soft soles absorbed it. Hunters chose footwear that allowed them to feel the surface beneath them, adjusting pressure intuitively. They avoided rigid designs that forced heavy steps. Over time, their feet learned the terrain. That learning reduced conscious effort. Reduced effort made movement smoother. Smoothness made silence easier. If your attention softens now, that is a sign that effort is decreasing, which is exactly what this story is meant to encourage. Even head coverings mattered. Fabric brushing against ears or cheeks could create subtle noise, especially in wind. Hunters arranged coverings to stay close without fluttering. Fluttering fabric creates unpredictable sound. Predictable sound is easier to manage. Predictability reduces stress. Reduced stress supports calm breathing. Everything connected in small, quiet ways. As you listen, you may notice how predictable the rhythm of the narration feels. That predictability helps the mind relax, knowing there are no surprises ahead. Clothing choices also changed with terrain. In dense forests, snagging was a risk. Hunters preferred smoother outer layers that slid past branches quietly. In open areas, wind protection mattered more. They adapted without complaint, knowing conditions always changed. Adaptation was quieter than resistance. Resistance created abrupt movements. Abrupt movements created noise. Acceptance allowed calm. You can accept whatever state you are in right now. Awake, drowsy, or drifting, all are fine. Garments were often repaired with quietness in mind. Hard knots or rough patches could rub or tap. Hunters smoothed seams and adjusted fastenings to reduce sound. These repairs were simple, but thoughtful. They reflected an understanding that silence is built from many small decisions. As you listen, the story builds calm the same way, through repetition and gentle detail rather than dramatic moments. Temperature shifts during the day required clothing changes. Morning cold, midday sun, evening chill. Hunters adjusted layers gradually to avoid sudden discomfort. Sudden discomfort causes quick movements. Quick movements create noise. Gradual change preserved silence. Gradual change also preserved energy. Energy conservation supported long journeys. In this moment, energy conservation is happening naturally. Your body is using less effort as it rests more deeply. Clothing that fit well reduced mental distraction. When nothing pinched, slipped, or pulled, attention could remain outward, focused on listening and observation. This reduced internal chatter. Reduced chatter allowed clearer awareness. Clear awareness supported quiet decisions. In your own experience, reduced internal chatter may feel like emptiness or softness. That is not a problem. That is rest beginning to take shape. Hunters also understood that silence did not require perfection. A soft brush of fabric was acceptable. What mattered was avoiding sharp, sudden sounds. Clothing was designed to fail gently rather than abruptly. Gentle failure blended into the environment. Abrupt failure stood out. This principle applies beyond clothing. Gentle thoughts blend into rest. Abrupt thoughts wake the mind. If a thought appears now, let it soften rather than pushing it away. Over time, hunters developed a sense for how their clothing sounded in different conditions. Snowfall, wind, cold, and movement all interacted. This awareness became automatic. They no longer needed to think about it. Silence emerged naturally. You do not need to think about relaxing. The conditions are already supportive. Allow relaxation to emerge on its own. Clothing also protected against distraction from cold. Cold draws attention inward, often urgently. Warmth allows attention to remain steady. Steady attention supports quiet movement. Warmth does not need to be excessive. It needs to be consistent. In this moment, consistent sound and pacing provide a kind of mental warmth, supporting calm without overstimulation. When night fell, clothing choices became even more important. Darkness increased reliance on hearing and balance. Quiet clothing preserved these senses. Hunters trusted their preparations. Trust reduced anxiety. Anxiety creates noise. Calm trust supported silence. As you listen now, you can trust this steady narration to continue without interruption. There is nothing you need to anticipate. Clothing that did not speak allowed hunters to move as part of the forest rather than against it. They were not invisible, but they were unobtrusive. Their presence did not disrupt the natural soundscape more than necessary. This harmony was practical, not symbolic. It worked. And right now, harmony between sound, pacing, and your state of rest is being created gently. There is no final instruction in this segment, only the image of quiet garments moving through snow, bending, shifting, and settling without complaint. The forest remains hushed. The wind moves softly. And the story continues onward, calm and unhurried, allowing your awareness to sink a little deeper into stillness, when nothing needs to be done, and rest can arrive naturally. In snowy forests, the way the foot met the ground shaped everything that followed. Ancient hunters understood that footwear was not about speed or strength, but about conversation with the snow. Every step sent information upward through the sole, telling the body whether the surface was soft, hollow, icy, or stable. Simple footwear allowed this conversation to happen clearly. Thick, rigid barriers dulled sensation and encouraged heavy steps. Lighter, flexible designs allowed careful placement and gradual weight transfer. As you listen now, imagine that gentle feedback, a quiet exchange between foot and ground, steady and calm, much like the exchange between sound and your resting attention. In deep snow, sinking too far created struggle, and struggle created noise. To prevent this, some hunters used early forms of snowshoes, spreading weight across a larger surface. This reduced depth of sinking and preserved balance. Balance mattered because imbalance forced sudden corrections. Snowshoes were not tools for speed. They were tools for steadiness. Each step landed more evenly, compressing snow slowly rather than punching through it. The rhythm became predictable, and predictability kept movement quiet. As you listen, predictability in the pacing of this story may feel comforting, helping your mind settle without effort. Snowshoes required their own technique. Lifting them too high wasted energy and disturbed snow. Hunters learned to glide them forward, keeping them close to the surface. Turns were wide and deliberate. Sudden pivots could scrape or hiss. This encouraged slow, flowing movement rather than sharp direction changes. The body adapted to this rhythm, and once adapted, it felt natural. Natural movement is quieter than forced movement. In your own experience now, allowing the story to flow without effort can feel easier than trying to follow every word. In shallower snow or mixed terrain, hunters often preferred lighter footwear without wide frames. This allowed more precise placement around roots, stones, and frozen debris. Precision reduced accidental contact. Accidental contact created sound. The foot was placed with intention, but not tension. Feeling the ground mattered more than moving quickly. This sensitivity required trust in the body's ability to respond. Trust reduced stiffness. Reduced stiffness improved balance. Balance kept movement quiet. You do not need to trust anything actively right now. The environment of this story supports rest naturally. Footwear also influenced posture. Heavier designs encouraged leaning forward, which shifted weight unpredictably. Lighter designs allowed a more upright, Centered stance. Centered posture made weight transfer smoother and quieter. Hunters adjusted their stance continuously, responding to feedback from their feet. This feedback loop prevented surprises. Preventing surprises reduced stress. Stress creates noise. Calm posture supported calm movement. As you listen, your posture may adjust subtly on its own, finding a position that feels more comfortable and stable. Temperature affected footwear behavior. In extreme cold, materials stiffened. Hunters anticipated this and moved even more gently, allowing extra time for the sole to settle into the snow. Rushing stiff materials caused cracking sounds. Slowing down avoided that. Slowing down also conserved energy. Energy conservation prevented fatigue. Fatigue leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to noise. Everything circled back to patience. Patience is quiet. If your thoughts slow here, that is patience taking shape in the mind. Moisture was carefully managed. Wet footwear froze quickly, becoming hard and noisy. Hunters avoided stepping into water unnecessarily and dried footwear whenever possible. This care was not obsessive. It was habitual. Habits reduced decision-making. Reduced decision-making lowers mental load. Lower mental load supports calm awareness. In this moment, mental load may be decreasing for you as well. There is nothing to decide. The story unfolds steadily whether you follow closely or drift lightly. Footwear edges mattered too. Sharp edges cut into crust and created sound. Rounded or flexible edges compressed snow more gently. Hunters noticed this over time and adjusted designs or techniques accordingly. They angled steps to reduce edge contact, placing weight more centrally. These small changes had large effects on sound. Quiet is built from many small choices. Rest is built the same way. Each small release of tension contributes to a larger sense of ease. Snow conditions changed constantly, and footwear had to respond. A path that was quiet in the morning could become noisy by afternoon. Hunters adapted by altering step length, pressure, and pace. They did not blame the tools. They adjusted their use. This flexibility reduced frustration. Reduced frustration kept movement smooth. Smoothness reduced noise. In your listening now, flexibility can mean allowing attention to ebb and flow without concern. The story does not require constant focus. In packed animal trails, footwear interacted differently with the surface. Snowshoes might be unnecessary or even awkward. Lighter footwear allowed better control. Hunters switched methods as needed, carrying tools or choosing routes that matched their equipment. This adaptability was quiet because it was planned. Planning prevented rush changes. Rush changes create sound. You are not required to plan anything here. The pacing is already set to support rest. Footwear also affected how hunters stopped. Stopping suddenly can cause sliding or scraping. Hunters slowed into stops, easing weight back and allowing snow to compress. This made pauses quiet. Quiet pauses mattered as much as quiet steps. Pauses prevented chains of noise. In this story, pauses exist in the rhythm between phrases, allowing your mind to rest in those spaces. Over time, hunters developed an intuitive sense of how their footwear would behave before stepping. This intuition came from experience, not theory. It reduced conscious effort. Reduced effort made movement smoother. Smooth movement blended into the environment. Blending reduced stress. Stress reduction preserved quiet. As you listen now, intuition may guide you toward rest without instruction. Your body knows how to relax when conditions are gentle. Snow sometimes behaved unexpectedly even with good footwear. A hidden ice patch could slip. A hollow could collapse. Hunters accepted this uncertainty calmly. They trusted their ability to recover slowly rather than reacting sharply. Slow recovery kept noise minimal. Acceptance reduced panic. Panic is loud. Calm acceptance is quiet. If a thought slips or startles you slightly, you can let it settle without reaction. The story continues steadily. At night, footwear feedback became even more important. Vision faded, and sensation-guided movement. Hunters felt their way through snow, trusting the conversation between soul and surface. This trust reduced hesitation. Hesitation often leads to awkward shifts. Smooth confidence reduced those shifts. In your experience now, you do not need confidence. The steady tone of this narration provides enough reassurance for rest to deepen. Footwear did not make hunters silent on its own. It worked together with posture, breath, and patience. Silence was always a whole-body practice. Tools supported it, but awareness created it. Awareness does not need to be sharp. It can be soft and open. Soft awareness supports rest. You may notice that your awareness feels broader now, less focused on details, more comfortable. In winter forests, every step was a negotiation with snow. Footwear shaped that negotiation, making it gentler and quieter. Hunters listened with their feet, adjusted with their bodies, and moved without urgency. The image does not end sharply. It continues, one careful step after another, fading softly into the forest, while you are free to follow the sound of this story or let it drift into the background as rest arrives naturally. In snowy forests, silence alone was not enough. Ancient hunters also learned to manage how they were seen. Trees, shadows, and uneven terrain helped break straight lines of sight. A moving figure in open snow is easy to notice, but movement broken into small parts blends more easily. Hunters understood this intuitively. They moved from tree to tree, letting trunks interrupt their outline. Each pause behind solid cover reduced visibility and allowed the forest to absorb their presence. As you listen now, imagine that gentle rhythm of movement and pause, a pattern that feels unhurried and safe, encouraging your own awareness to slow. Trees provided more than physical cover. They shaped light. In winter, low sun angles create long shadows that stretch across snow. Hunters use these shadows to soften contrast, stepping where light and dark met rather than crossing bright open patches. High contrast draws attention. Soft contrast fades into the background. This understanding did not require calculation. It came from watching how shapes appeared and disappeared with small movements. As your mind relaxes, contrast between thoughts may soften too, allowing ideas to blend instead of demanding attention. Broken sightlines were especially important. Straight paths allow eyes to follow movement easily. Curved paths, cluttered with trunks and branches, interrupt tracking. Hunters preferred routes where vision was constantly reset. Each tree created a new visual frame. This made slow movement even harder to detect. They did not rush between covers. Rushing defeats the purpose. They waited, then moved calmly. In your listening now, broken sightlines are like gentle pauses between ideas. They prevent mental racing, making rest feel more natural. Shadows under evergreen trees were particularly useful. Dense branches blocked light, creating darker pockets where movement blended easily. Snow beneath these trees stayed colder and softer, adding a layer of quiet underfoot. Hunters favored these shaded zones, even if the path was longer. Longer paths reduced exposure. Reduced exposure reduced risk. This preference for safety over speed shaped winter movement. As you listen, there is no need to reach an ending quickly. The longer, softer path toward rest is often the quieter one. Even small rises in terrain mattered. A slight mound, a fallen log, or a shallow dip could hide movement at critical moments. Hunters positioned themselves so that only part of the body was visible at a time. Partial visibility is less noticeable than full exposure. They crouched slightly, lowering their outline against the horizon of snow. Lower outlines blend better with uneven ground. If your body naturally sinks deeper into your seat or bed right now, that is a similar instinct toward lower, calmer positioning. Hunters also paid attention to how animals looked when alert. Many animals lift their heads briefly, then lower them again to feed. Movement timed to those lowered moments was less likely to be noticed. Trees and brush helped hide transitions. Hunters waited patiently, letting the forest's rhythm guide them. Waiting was not passive. It was attentive calm. In this story, Waiting is allowed too. You are not being led toward a sudden point. You are being guided gently through a landscape of quiet ideas. Light changed constantly with clouds and snow. A passing cloud softened shadows. Falling snow reduced visibility further. Hunters noticed these changes and used them. Movement during softened light blended better. Harsh sunlight created sharp edges and glare. In those moments, hunters slowed or stopped. Adjusting to light was part of staying unseen. You may notice your awareness dimming slightly now, like light softening at dusk. That dimming is welcome here. Trees also helped manage sound indirectly. Branches and trunks broke up echoes. Movement behind a tree sounded different than movement in open space. Hunters combined visual cover with acoustic cover, choosing places where both sight and sound were softened. This layering of protection reduced stress. Reduced stress kept movement smooth. Smooth movement stayed quiet. As you listen, the layering of calm words and steady pacing creates a similar effect, cushioning your thoughts from sharp edges. In denser forests, sight lines were naturally short. Hunters moved with more confidence there, though still carefully. In sparse forests, they became more cautious. Fewer trees meant fewer interruptions. Each step was planned with greater care. They adjusted behavior to environment without frustration. Acceptance kept the mind calm. Calm minds make quieter decisions. You do not need to adjust anything here. The environment of this story remains steady and supportive. Snow on branches added another element. Heavy snow weighed branches down, changing familiar shapes. Hunters accounted for this, noticing which branches might drop snow suddenly if brushed. A sudden fall of snow could be loud and visible. They avoided contact when possible, or waited until conditions changed. This patience avoided unnecessary disturbance. In your listening now, patience is built in. There is nothing you need to avoid or manage. The story keeps things gentle for you. Shadows lengthened as the day went on. Hunters used evening light carefully, knowing that movement could disappear into darkness more easily. At the same time, they moved cautiously, aware that their own vision was reduced. Balance between concealment and safety mattered. They did not sacrifice stability for invisibility. Stability kept movement quiet. This balance is echoed here. The story does not try to overwhelm your senses. It maintains enough clarity to feel safe, while remaining soft enough to encourage rest. Trees also guided routes. Lines of trunks often followed ridges or streams. Hunters followed these natural corridors, letting cover guide direction. Direction guided pace. Pace guided sound. Everything connected. The forest provided structure without instructions. As you listen, structure is present too. The gentle progression of ideas gives shape to time, making it easier to let go of clock awareness. Even when pausing, hunters chose positions carefully. Standing in open snow made a figure stand out. Pausing behind a trunk allowed stillness without visibility. Stillness without visibility reduced anxiety. Anxiety causes micromovements. Micromovements create noise. Calm hiding reduced all of that. In your own experience, stillness without expectation can feel deeply restful. You do not need to be alert or responsive. You can simply be. In some cases, hunters used fallen trees as cover, moving along their length rather than across open ground. This kept their outline low and broken. The forest floor became a series of gentle shelters rather than an obstacle course. Seeing the forest this way changed how movement felt. It became cooperative instead of confrontational. Cooperation is quieter than struggle. If your thoughts feel less combative now, that is a sign that rest is deepening. Snow glare could be intense under clear skies. Hunters avoided moving directly across reflective surfaces when possible. They used tree shadows to reduce contrast. Reduced contrast meant reduced visibility. This sensitivity to light prevented sudden exposure. Sudden exposure can cause hurried movement. Hurried movement creates noise. Everything returned to patience. As you listen, patience is not something you need to practice. It arises naturally from the slow pace. At night, trees became silhouettes. Hunters relied on their darker shapes to hide their own. Movement near tree lines blended into the vertical rhythm of trunks. Open snowfields were avoided and less necessary. In darkness, blending mattered more than speed. This caution reduced accidents and noise. In your own night listening, darkness may feel comforting. Reduced visual input allows the mind to rest more deeply. Using trees and shadows was not about disappearing completely. Hunters were still present in the forest. It was about reducing disruption. They moved in a way that did not draw attention unnecessarily. This restraint was practical and calming. In this story, restraint takes the form of gentle repetition and steady tone, offering comfort without intensity. The forest never promised perfect concealment. Branches shifted. Light changed. Snow fell. Hunters accepted this uncertainty. Acceptance reduced tension. Reduced tension kept movement fluid. Fluid movement stayed quiet. You can accept uncertainty here too. You do not need to know where sleep will arrive. It will come when conditions are right. There is no dramatic ending to this segment. The image remains of slow movement between trees, shadows stretching across snow, sightlines breaking and reforming gently. The forest continues to breathe quietly. And the story continues with it, leaving space for your awareness to soften further, resting comfortably among trunks and shadows, when nothing demands attention, and calm can deepen without effort. In cold winter air, breath becomes visible and audible, turning something automatic into something that must be managed gently. Ancient hunters learned that sound did not only come from footsteps or movement, but also from within the body itself. Heavy breathing could fog the air and carry farther than expected. For this reason, hunters paid quiet attention to their breath, not forcing it, but allowing it to slow naturally. Calm breathing softened the body, and a soft body moved more quietly. As you listen now, you do not need to change your breathing. Simply notice how it may already be slowing on its own, guided by the steady rhythm of the story. Breathing through the nose helped warm the air and reduce sharp sounds. Short, controlled breaths prevented sudden exhales that could create visible clouds in cold stillness. Hunters learned this gradually, through long exposure to winter conditions. They did not count breaths or follow strict patterns. They simply allowed breath to match movement. A step would settle as breath settled. This coordination reduced tension. Reduced tension made movement smoother. Smooth movement was quieter. In your own experience now, breath and listening may be aligning gently, without instruction, creating a sense of ease. Stillness was as important as movement. Hunters often stood motionless for long periods, allowing breath to calm completely. Stillness reduced sound and allowed listening to deepen. In these moments, the body became part of the forest's quiet rhythm. Stillness was not stiffness. Muscles remained soft, ready but relaxed. This softness prevented sudden adjustments. Sudden adjustments create noise. As you listen, stillness may be spreading through your body. You do not need to hold any posture. Stillness can exist even while lying down or sitting comfortably. Cold air can tighten muscles and speed breathing. Hunters countered this by maintaining warmth and avoiding rushed movement. Rushing increases breath rate, and rapid breath is harder to quiet. By moving slowly, breath stayed slow. By staying warm, breath stayed smooth. Everything supported everything else. As you listen now, warmth and comfort may help your breathing remain gentle. The story itself avoids sharp changes, helping your nervous system stay calm. Breath also influenced focus. Shallow, fast breathing narrows attention and increases alertness. Slow, steady breathing widens awareness and encourages calm observation. Hunters benefited from wide awareness. It allowed them to notice subtle changes without tension. This awareness did not feel sharp. It felt open. In this moment, open awareness can feel like drowsiness or mental softness. That is welcome here. You do not need to sharpen your focus. Soft focus supports rest. Visible breath in cold air reminded hunters of their presence. A cloud of breath could reveal position even when movement was hidden. This awareness encouraged restraint. They waited for moments when wind carried breath away, or they angled their face to reduce visibility. These adjustments were subtle and unhurried. Subtle changes are quieter than dramatic ones. In your listening now, subtlety is also at work. The story shifts gently rather than suddenly, allowing your mind to follow without effort. Long periods of stillness required mental calm. Restless thoughts often translated into restless bodies. Hunters learned to quiet the mind by focusing on simple sensations: the feel of cold air, the pressure of feet on snow, the rhythm of breath. This focus was not intense. It was steady. Steadiness prevented fidgeting. Fidgeting creates noise. As you listen, simple awareness of sound may be enough. You do not need to analyze or imagine anything complex. When breath became strained, hunters paused. Pausing was not failure. It was adjustment. They waited until breathing settled before moving again. This prevented chains of noise caused by fatigue. Fatigue leads to heavier steps. Heavier steps break snow. Everything returned to patience. In this moment, patience means allowing rest to arrive without forcing it. If your body feels heavy, that is not a problem. Heaviness often comes before sleep. In extreme cold, even breath control had limits. Hunters accepted these limits. Acceptance reduced anxiety. Anxiety tightens breath and muscles. Tightness creates noise. Calm acceptance kept breath as smooth as conditions allowed. This attitude preserved energy and quiet. You can accept your own limits now. You do not need to stay awake or alert. The story does not require effort. Stillness also helped conserve heat. Less movement meant less heat loss. Conserved heat prevented shivering. Shivering is loud and disruptive. By staying still when needed, hunters preserved both warmth and silence. In your own experience, stillness may be helping your body settle into a comfortable temperature, making rest easier. Breath and stillness work together during waiting. Hunters often waited for long stretches, breathing slowly, listening. Waiting was not empty time. It was preparation. Preparation reduced sudden reactions. Sudden reactions are noisy. As you listen, waiting has no goal. It is simply part of the rhythm, a gentle pause that supports calm. At night, breath sounded louder in the quiet forest. Hunters became even more aware of its rhythm. They angled their faces, adjusted posture, and slowed further. Darkness heightened hearing, making breath management more important. In this story, darkness is metaphorical. Reduced stimulation allows inner quiet to become more noticeable. That quiet can feel comforting. Mental calm was essential. Fear or excitement altered breathing immediately. Hunters trained themselves to remain emotionally even. Emotional spikes translated into physical noise. Calm emotions kept breath steady. This calm was practical, not dramatic. It served survival. In your listening now, emotional neutrality may feel like emptiness or peace. Both are fine. Stillness also allowed the forest to resume its natural sounds. When hunters stopped moving, birds resumed calls, wind patterns became clearer, and the environment felt alive again. This feedback reassured them. Quiet movement allowed listening. Listening encouraged more quiet movement. The cycle reinforced itself. As you listen, the absence of urgency may feel reassuring, allowing your mind to settle further. Breath awareness became automatic with experience. Hunters no longer thought about it consciously. It simply happened. Automatic calm is the most stable form. You do not need to practice anything here. The conditions are already set for calm to emerge naturally. In moments of uncertainty, returning to breath and stillness provided grounding. Grounding prevented panic. Panic is loud. Calm is quiet. This simple truth guided winter movement. As you listen, if a thought arises, you can let it pass without reaction, returning gently to sound. The forest never demanded constant motion. It rewarded patience. breath and stillness were tools for aligning with that rhythm. There is no dramatic outcome to this practice. It simply continues. Quiet breath, quiet body, quiet movement. The image remains of a hunter standing still in snowy trees, breath slow, body relaxed, listening deeply. The forest holds its quiet. And the story continues in that same gentle space, leaving you free to remain with the sound or to drift softly into rest, where stillness and breath blend into calm without needing an ending. As the day faded and light softened across the snowy forest, ancient hunters began to think about the journey back. Returning was as important as approaching. Fatigue, cold, and fading visibility could turn a careless step into danger. They chose routes they already knew, paths remembered through many winters. Familiar ground reduced uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty kept movements calm. Calm movement conserved energy for the long walk home. As you listen now, imagine that gentle shift in focus, from careful approach to quiet return, when nothing needs to be rushed, and each step is taken with the same patience as before. Night brought deeper silence. Snow reflected moonlight softly, and shadows grew longer and less defined. Hunters relied on memory and feel rather than sight. They remembered where snow tended to be deep, where crust formed, where roots waited beneath the surface. This memory allowed smoother movement without hesitation. Hesitation often caused sudden shifts. Smooth memory-guided steps stayed quiet. In your listening now, memory is not required. The story carries you forward gently, without asking you to recall anything. Return routes were chosen with safety in mind. Hunters avoided steep slopes and open areas at night, preferring tree lines and sheltered paths. Trees blocked wind and broke sound. Familiar shelter points provided reassurance. Reassurance reduced stress. Stress makes noise. Quiet confidence made movement steady. As your body rests now, reassurance may come from the predictable tone and pace of this narration, allowing your muscles to soften further. Even after success, hunters did not hurry. Carrying extra weight required even greater care. They adjusted posture and pace to maintain balance. Balance prevented slips. Slips allowed. Patience continued to guide every decision. This patience was not forced. It was habitual. Habit reduces mental effort. Reduced effort preserves calm. In your experience now, habit may take the form of staying still, listening without expectation, letting rest deepen naturally. Snow often changed overnight. Wind could fill tracks. New snowfall could erase familiar signs. Hunters anticipated this, marking routes mentally using trees, rocks, and terrain rather than footprints alone. These landmarks remained when tracks vanished. Relying on stable references prevented confusion. Confusion leads to rushed decisions. Rushed decisions create noise. Calm orientation supported a quiet return. You do not need orientation here. The story provides a steady reference point, keeping you grounded. Cold intensified at night. Hunters managed energy carefully, avoiding unnecessary stops that could lead to chill. Yet they also avoided pushing too hard. Balance mattered. Too much movement caused fatigue. Too little caused cold. Finding the middle path preserved warmth and silence. This middle path is present in this story as well. It does not overstimulate, and it does not fade abruptly. It stays gentle and steady, allowing your body to respond comfortably. Sounds at night felt sharper. A snapped twig echoed more clearly. Hunters slowed further, accepting the night sensitivity. They adjusted their expectations, knowing that what was quiet by day might not be quiet by night. Adjusting expectations prevented frustration. Frustration tightens the body. Tight bodies move loudly. Acceptance kept muscles loose and movement smooth. You can accept whatever state you are in now. Awake, drowsy, or drifting, all are welcome. Reaching shelter did not mean sudden relief. Hunters transitioned slowly, allowing bodies to cool gradually and breath to settle. Sudden transitions shock the system. Gradual transitions preserve calm. They removed equipment carefully, managed clothing quietly, and rested without haste. Rest was earned through patience, not force. In your listening now, rest does not need to be earned. It is offered freely through gentle sound and time. The forest outside remained quiet after they stopped moving. Snow continued to fall. Wind shifted. The world did not change because of their presence. This sense of continuity brought peace. They were part of a larger rhythm, not separate from it. In this moment, you two are part of a rhythm of sound and silence, breath and rest that continues without effort. Looking back on the journey, there was no single secret to silent movement. It was many small practices working together. Reading snow, moving weight slowly, following animal paths, listening to wind, wearing quiet clothing, managing breath and stillness, choosing cover, returning carefully. None of these stood alone. Together, they created calm. Calm allowed survival. This reflection does not demand conclusion. It simply rests on the understanding that patience shapes quiet success. Silence was never absolute. There were always small sounds, but those sounds blended into the forest rather than interrupting it. Hunters accepted imperfection. Acceptance kept the mind at ease. An easy mind supports gentle movement. Gentle movement preserves energy. Energy allows return. This gentle chain of cause and effect guided winter life. As the night deepened, the forest settled further. Snow softened edges. Wind slowed. The world felt held. Hunters rested, knowing they had moved with care and restraint. That knowledge brought quiet satisfaction, not excitement. Satisfaction did not disturb rest. It allowed sleep to come naturally. In your own experience now, satisfaction can be simple. You have listened. That is enough. There is no dramatic ending to this story, only a soft closing of attention. The snowy forest remains. Paths fade beneath fresh snow. Wind moves invisibly. Trees stand quietly. And you remain here, listening or drifting, held by calm. Thank you for spending this time in quiet history, for walking slowly through snowy forests with these ancient footsteps. Thank you for listening gently, without hurry. May calm remain with you as the sound fades, and may rest come easily, carried by patience, silence, and the steady comfort of this peaceful moment.